Well, good morning. This is John Neerman, and it is my pleasure to call this meeting of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to order. Today is Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. The time is 9:30 a.m., and I'll begin with a roll call. Good morning, Commissioner Lindley.
Good morning.
And good morning, Commissioner Janeka.
Good morning.
Our commissioners are all present. Ms. Smith, are you there? I think our general counsel may be on mute. Ms. Smith, can you hear me?
I am here. Go to webinar kicked me out for a minute, and I just got back on. Thanks.
Okay. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How about our public interest counsel?
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning, Mr. McWhorter. I'd like to remind folks to keep their phones on mute when they're not speaking. I'd also like to remind anyone who's here only to listen that they can watch the meeting online, and that link is available on the agenda notice. For each item where argument or discussion is allowed, we will inform speakers of their time limits. Registration is now closed, but if you'd like to address the commission on a particular item, please email agenda@tceq.texas.gov with your name, affiliation, and the item that you'd like to comment on, and we'll do our best to accommodate that request. For those making presentations, please wait to begin until either I or our general counsel have asked you to begin speaking. And please remember to check to make sure that your line is unmuted before you speak. Before we get going, I did want to note that today is a state holiday, or an optional state holiday. It's Cesar Chavez Day. And Cesar Chavez is, of course, well known for his work seeking justice and dignity for the nation's farm workers, including many of our fellow Texans who do the difficult work of helping to put produce on our dinner tables. And so I think it's appropriate to recognize and honor Cesar Chavez's work and to express some gratitude for the farm workers that he championed. So I wanted to take the occasion to mention that. And with that, Ms. Smith, well, first let me thank everyone for being present. And Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call the first item.
Item number 1 is the consideration of the ALJ's proposal for decision and proposed order concerning the application of Victor D. Turley and Alexis Hill Turley for TPDES permit number WQ0015728001. The applicant should speak first, followed by the protestant, the executive director, and then the Office of Public Interest Counsel. Each party will have 5 minutes of oral argument time. The applicants may reserve time for rebuttal as they bear the burden of proof.
Good morning. Is Mr. Seal with us?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead, Mr. Seal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Derek Seal with McGinnis Lockridge on behalf of Victor and Alexis Turley, who are the applicants in this case. Mr. and Ms. Turley, I believe they've registered and are standing by if you'd like to hear from them. I think we'd like to save at least two of our 3 minutes for rebuttal if we have any. The Turleys support the administrative law judge's proposal for decision and the proposed order. This is the first case since the passage of Senate Bill 709 in 2015 where the commissioners have been asked to decide a case based solely on a motion for summary disposition. But the facts and the law in this case are straightforward. The Turleys established a prima facie demonstration that their application meets all of the technical and legal requirements and that it's protective of human health and safety, the environment, and physical property. They did this by filing the administrative record with SOA. And all of that language comes directly out of the statute or out of TCEQ's rules, which go together. TCEQ's rules in Senate Bill 709 clearly provide that the Turleys fully met their burden of proof based solely on the administrative record. Although the protestant, Ms. Heitmeyer, had the opportunity to rebut the prima facie demonstration, she didn't offer any evidence to do so. Thus, there's nothing in the evidentiary record, which in this case is the administrative record, indicating there is any reason why the draft permit should not be issued. This record is based on the executive director's review of the application, and it fully supports issuance of the draft permit. The Turleys' motion for summary disposition was not challenged. Ms. Heitmeyer did not file a response. Judge Vanderveck granted the Turleys' motion and canceled the hearing on the merits because there was nothing to have a hearing about. Judge Vanderbeck's proposal for decision and proposed order was not challenged by any party. There were no exceptions and no replies. And for the reasons stated in the PFD, the Turleys urged the commissioners to adopt the proposed order and issue the draft permit. We're certainly available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. I have none at the moment. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
No questions, no, thank you.
Thank you. We're to hear next from Ms. Heitmeyer. Are you there? And Ms. Heitmeyer, if you're there, you might double check to make sure you're not on mute. And Ms. Smith, let me ask you if Ms. Heitmeyer registered to speak this morning.
She did not.
Okay. All right. It seems that Ms. Heitmeyer is not with us, so let's move on to the Executive Director staff.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, Public Interest Counsel. My name is Celia Castro with the Environmental Law Division, representing the Executive Director. With me today is Gunnar Dupke with the Water Quality Division. In this matter, the Executive Director supports the Administrative Law Judge's proposal for decision and proposed order and recommends that the Commission adopt the proposed order, grant the application, and issue the permit. We are available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Castro. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Janeka?
None, thank you.
Let's hear next from OPIC.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and the Executive Directors, Attorneys, and staff. I'm Amanda Pessanen for the Office of Public Interest Counsel. OPIC supports the Administrative Law Judge's proposal for decision and agrees with the ALJ's recommendation that the Commission approve the application of Victor D. Turley and Alexis Hill Turley and issue the water quality permit. As explained in the ALJ's PFD, applicant's motion for summary disposition was granted on each of the 5 issues referred to SOA, and after the sole protestant failed to file testimony or evidence by the deadline set forth in Order Number 1. In accordance with Senate Bill 709, applicants made a prima facie case that the draft permit meets all state and federal legal and technical requirements such that it would protect human health and safety, the environment, and physical property. The protestant failed to refute this prima facie demonstration. No party has filed exceptions to the ALJ's PFD. OPIC therefore recommends that the Commission adopt the ALJ's proposal for decision and issue the proposed order. Thank you, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pessanen. I have none. Commissioner Lindley?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioners? Commissioner Janeka?
Thanks.
Mr. Seal, we didn't provide you very much to rebut, but if you'd like to use any of your remaining time, have at it.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any rebuttal. As you pointed out, I don't really think I've got much to rebut.
Thank you. Well, colleagues, here's how I see it. I think as a legal matter, this item, as Mr. Seal said, is pretty straightforward. The administrative record and the executive director's response to comments are prima facie evidence that the draft permit complies with the applicable law and is protective of human health and the environment. Here, the ALJ found that the applicant's evidence, including the administrative record, provides a clear, positive, direct, and credible demonstration to that effect. The protestants offered no evidence to dispute any of the referred issues. So, in my view, it was therefore appropriate for the ALJ to grant the applicant's motion for summary disposition. So, I would adopt the ALJ's proposed order and grant the application. I do have a few corrections, which I think what I'll do is read those into a motion, and then we can discuss it on the other side. So, colleagues, I move that we adopt the ALJ's proposed order with the following modifications. In conclusion of law number 7, replace the word irrefutable with unrefuted to reflect the correct legal standard in Texas Government Code section 2003.047I2. In conclusion of law number 7, remove the word following to correct a typographical error. And finally, include applicants' full names, Victor D. Turley and Alexis Hill Turley, in both the introductory paragraph and ordering provisions for clarity and consistency. I would grant the permit application of Victor D. Turley and Alexis Hill Turley for Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit number WQ0015728001 and adopt the Executive Director's response to comments. And that closes my motion, and I turn to you colleagues for your thoughts. Commissioner Lindley?
I'm in a complete agreement. I will let I'll let Bobby speak before I make a second, but I'm in complete agreement.
Okay. And I'll
perfectly comfortable, and I only want to agree that there's a big difference between the definition of the word irrefutable and unrefuted. So I'm in strong agreement on that correction as well, Chairman. Thank you.
Good. I appreciate that. So do I hear a second?
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 2 is the application by Wholesome US Incorporated for air quality permit numbers 8996 and PSD TX 454M5. The parties have been notified that the Commission will not take oral argument but may ask questions. Those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
So for the benefit of those who are not familiar with our process, the Commission has a two-part analysis for considering requests for contested cases. First, we consider whether the requesters have met the procedural and substantive requirements to be entitled to a contested case. And then assuming at least one requester meets the requirements, we will consider which issues are appropriate to refer for hearing. So part 1 is about who gets a hearing, and part 2 is about which issues are referred. Requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public and who have articulated personal concerns that are relevant and material to the permit and have done so both in timely comments and a timely hearing request are entitled to a hearing. Associations can have standing if they name at least one member who would have standing in his or her own right and raise issues that are both germane to the organization's purpose and relevant to the application. So colleagues, in this case, we have numerous requesters. However, fewer than 10 of them actually cited a personal concern, that is a concern about their own well-being. And of those 10, the closest is located 1.21 miles from the proposed facility. So the question in my mind is really whether at that distance a person is affected in a manner different from the general public. And of course, these are very case-by-case specific determinations. In this case, we do have a major new source review authorization. However, the amendment authorizes new emissions that are known to be safe at the fence line. The maximum concentrations of carbon monoxide and PM10 are below de minimis, and the maximum concentrations of PM2.5 are below the NAAQS and the PSD increment. And again, I'm speaking about concentrations at the fence line, and there would be considerable dispersion at a mile, more than a mile from the fence line. And so at the distance of the nearest requester, it seems to me that a person is not affected in a manner different from the general public. So I would deny these requests, but I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Commissioner Lindley?
I came down the same way. We've got a couple of these in front of us today, and they're very case-by-case specific, but I thought you laid it out very well, so I don't have anything to add to it, and I'll just leave it as I came down the same way and would support a motion denying the hearing request today.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
I found the same finding, and I agree, Chairman. The relevant factor in my mind was the constituents of concern falling under the de minimis standard or below that NAAQS, where I think it's a real hard case to argue that at the mile mark, a little beyond, there's going to be a real sustained impact different than the public.
Thank you. I think I'm ready for a motion.
I've got one. I would move that we deny all hearing requests, that we issue air permit quality numbers 8996 and PSD TX 454M5 to Wholesome US Incorporated as recommended by the Executive Director and adopt the Executive Director's response to comments.
I second that motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 3 is the application by Citgo Refining and Chemicals Company, LP, for an amendment and to renew air quality permit numbers 3875A and NE0027B. The parties have been notified that the Commission will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Colleagues, again, we have a two-part analysis for considering these requests. Part 1 is about who gets a hearing. Part 2 is about which issues are referred. And I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public and who have articulated personal concerns that are relevant and material to the permit and have done so in timely comments and a timely hearing request are entitled to a hearing. Again, associations can have standing if they name at least one member who would have standing in his or her own right and raise issues that are both germane to the organization's purpose and relevant to the application. On this item, we have a single request from the Citizens Alliance for Fairness and Progress in Corpus Christi. In my reading of the materials, the Alliance does raise issues germane to its purpose and has identified at least one member who resides within a mile of the facility. Because this permit amendment and renewal would authorize a range of emissions from the operation of docks within Citgo's refinery, my view is that the Alliance's members are affected, or at least one of them are affected in a manner different from the general public. And the Alliance also raises issues that are relevant and material to this permit. So on this one, I would be inclined to grant party status. Let me pause there and collect your thoughts, beginning with you, Commissioner Lindley.
I'm in agreement. I think it's appropriate that we grant the hearing request for the group.
Commissioner Janeka?
I'm in the same mind.
Appreciate that. Turning to the issues, we refer issues of fact that have been timely raised by an affected person and that are relevant and material to the application. So to put that a different way, they have to be within the agency's jurisdiction on this particular type of application. And on this one, I would refer 7 issues as follows: whether the draft permit contains adequate conditions to protect the health and safety of the Alliance's members and their families in the immediate vicinity of the facility, whether operations under the draft permit's terms will adversely affect air quality, whether the draft permit is adequate to protect against nuisance conditions, whether the applicant substantially complied with the public availability requirements under 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 39.405G, whether the draft permit requires the facility to utilize appropriate emission control technology, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and reporting requirements to demonstrate compliance with its material terms, and whether the application properly calculated and addressed potential emission sources, emission rates, and background concentrations to establish appropriate permit limits. Colleagues, there was an environmental justice question that was suggested. I would not refer a separate question on environmental justice to the extent that that question implicates any legal requirement. It is subsumed by the referred questions about the protectiveness of public health and the environment. So that's how I came out on the issues. Commissioner Lindley, how does that all sound to you?
Those 7 issues sound appropriate to me.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
I again reached the same conclusions, and I appreciate that last point you made, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just echo. I found that your recommendation in not referring the issue on environmental justice would be consistent with with our agency's past practice and with EPA's practice of the demonstration of protectiveness of health to the public meets the standard generally, but I do appreciate you making that point specifically.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. The only other note that I have is that this application actually is old enough that it's not subject to Senate Bill 709, but I would still be inclined to set a hearing duration of 180 days if that sounds agreeable to you.
I agree.
No objections?
I think we're ready for a motion.
Let me dive into it. I would move that we grant the hearing request of the Citizens Alliance for Fairness and Progress in Corpus Christi, that we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues. Issue 1, whether the draft permit contains adequate conditions to protect the health and safety of the Alliance's members and their families in the immediate vicinity of the facility. Issue 2, whether operations under the draft permit's terms will adversely affect air quality. Issue 3, whether the draft permit is adequate to protect against nuisance conditions from air contaminants affecting Alliance members' properties during facility operations. Issue 4, whether the applicant substantially complied with all applicable requirements regarding the public availability of the application in accordance with 30 TAC Section 39.405G. Issue 5, whether the draft permit requires the facility to utilize appropriate emission control technology. Issue 6, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and reporting requirements to demonstrate compliance with its material terms. And Issue 7, whether the application properly calculated and addressed potential emission sources, emission rates, and background concentrations to establish appropriate conditions in the draft permit. And finally, I would move that we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Ms. Smith? The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 4 is the application by Martin Marietta Materials Southwest LLC for renewal and amendment of air quality permit number 41849. The parties have been notified that the commission will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in on this item will be noted for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Colleagues, on this request, we have 8 requesters, 3 of whom reside more than 2.5 miles from the facility, and their interests are not distinguishable from the general public. 4 of the requesters live more than 1.5 miles from the facility and expressed what I read really as only generalized concerns or concerns that are outside our jurisdiction, such as effect on traffic. So I don't believe they've identified themselves as affected persons. And that leaves Mary Matthews. Ms. Matthews filed considerable documentation demonstrating her personal individualized concerns. Her property is slightly more than 1 mile from the facility, but I think she has, at least to me, convincingly demonstrated that she's an affected person. So I'm inclined to grant Ms. Matthews' request. And let me pause there and get your read of it. Commissioner Lindley.
I came down the same. I mean, at first I kind of questioned some of the recommendations to refer Ms. Matthews, but diving a little more into it, looking into what she provided as far as her hearing request was pretty thorough, and so I'm comfortable granting a hearing just for her.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
I reached the same conclusion. I think she made a very, very thorough demonstration of her effectiveness, and I would agree with your conclusions.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka, and Commissioner Lindley. I appreciate your comments. I was sort of in the same boat. This is one that required a harder look for me to get where I landed, but I think it's the right call. All right, turning to the issues, I would organize Ms. Matthews' request into 7 issues as follows: whether the plant will negatively affect air quality, whether it will negatively affect the health or property of the requester, whether it will negatively affect welfare, including vegetation, animals, and the environment in the surrounding area, whether cumulative impacts were adequately considered in accordance with the applicable rules, whether the draft permit will protect against nuisance dust emissions, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and record-keeping requirements, and whether the air dispersion modeling is adequate. And I apologize, I read through those quickly, and I can reread them, but Commissioner Lindley, how'd we come out?
I think we came out the same. I had 7 issues as well. Yeah.
Were you able to cross-reference? It occurred to me that I read this really fast.
No, I kept up, and if I'm the one that makes the motion, just make sure that if what I say captures what you read off, maybe I'll say it. I think we lined up though.
Okay, we'll double cross-check at the motion phase. Commissioner Janeka, what do you think?
I arrived at seven referable factors as well. I think there were some, many of the typical items that fall outside of our agency's purview, but I'm on the same page.
All right. In terms of other outstanding issues, there's some requests for reconsideration. I don't see any new facts that would alter the executive director's decision, so I would deny those. Since we're down to just one party at this point, I would include an ADR referral, and again, set a hearing duration of 180 days. And if y'all are all right with those terms, I think we're ready for a motion.
I will attempt a motion and see if we're good. I move that we grant the hearing request requested by Mary Matthews. Refer the matter to the Commission's Alternative Dispute Resolution Program to run concurrently with SOA scheduling efforts. That we deny the remaining hearing requests and requests for consideration. We refer the application to SOA for a test case hearing on the following 7 issues. 1, whether the plant will negatively affect air quality. 2, whether the plant will negatively affect the health of the requesters, including sensitive subgroups or physical property. 3, whether the plant will negatively affect welfare, including vegetation, animals, and the environment in the surrounding area. 4, whether cumulative impacts were adequately considered in accordance with applicable rules. 5, whether the draft permit contains adequate provisions to protect against nuisance dust emissions. 6, whether the draft permit contains adequate monitoring and record-keeping requirements to ensure compliance with applicable rules. And 7, whether the air dispersion modeling was adequately conducted in accordance with applicable rules, and that we set the hearing duration at 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing to the issuance of the proposal for decision.
Commissioner Lindley, did I hear you correctly to say that you would like to deny the remaining hearing requests and requests for reconsideration?
That is correct, but I will say it again that in my motion I say that I move that we would deny the remaining hearing requests and requests for consideration.
Thanks.
I would second that motion, as stated and clarified.
Thank you, colleagues. And Commissioner Lindley, the issues, I've duly cross-checked the issues, so I think we're good. The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
I vote aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 5 is the application by HEP Javelina Company, LLC, formerly known as Mark West Javelina Company, LLC, for renewal of air quality permit number 19296. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument, but may ask questions.
Thank you, colleagues. This item is a no increase renewal, and under Texas Health and Safety Code section 382.056G, we are prohibited from granting a hearing unless there are certain compliance history concerns which are not present in this case. So I think we are compelled to deny the single hearing request on this item. And imagine you might see it the same way. Commissioner Lindley?
I do.
Commissioner Janeka?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I will move that we find that there is no right to a hearing on this application pursuant to Texas Health and Safety Code, section 382.056 and TCEQ's rules, that we deny the hearing request, that we issue the renewal of air quality permit number 19296 to HEP Javelina Company, LLC, as recommended by the Executive Director, and finally, that we adopt the Executive Director's response to comments.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
I vote aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 6 is the application by the City of Rome for a major amendment to Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit number WQ001070101. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument, but may ask questions.
So colleagues, on this item, we have a petition requesting a contested case hearing, and it's signed by numerous residents of the city. However, it does not meet the minimum requirements for a request for a contested case, including the requirement under 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 55201D2, that requesters state a personal interest or concern. So I think we're compelled to deny these requests as well. And again, I imagine you arrived at the same conclusion, Commissioner Lindley?
I sure did, Chairman.
Commissioner Janeka?
Likewise.
I will entertain a motion.
I would move that we deny all hearing requests, that we grant the major amendment of Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit number WQ001070101 to the City of Rome, and adopts the Executive Director's response to comments.
I second that motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 7 is the consideration of the adoption of the renewal with amendments of TPDES General Permit TXG130000 to authorize discharges into or adjacent to water in the state by aquaculture facilities. The Executive Director's staff is here to present the item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I'm Laurie Fleet with the Water Quality Division. With me today is Hollis Henley from the Environmental Law Division. Staff requests adoption of a renewal with amendment of General Permit number TXG 130000, which authorizes discharges into or adjacent to water in the state from aquaculture facilities and other activities related to aquaculture. The primary purpose of the amendment is to expand the applicability to include the new oyster mariculture program that was required by House Bill 1300 from the 86th Texas Legislature in 2019. The renewal with amendment will replace the current permit that expires on April 18th, 2021. On August 14th, 2020, TCEQ received a letter from EPA stating that they had no objection to the draft general permit. Public notice of the draft general permit was published in the Texas Register and one statewide newspaper on October 2nd, 2020. The public comment period ended on November 2nd, 2020, and no public comments were received. Staff recommends adoption of this general permit. Additionally, staff requests authorization to make non-substantive revisions to comply with Texas Register requirements. Thank you, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fleet. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Smith, is there anyone signed in to speak on this item?
No one's registered on this one.
All right, well, let's hear from the Office of Public Interest Counsel.
OPIC recommends adoption of the renewal and amendment of this general permit as presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. McWhirter. Colleagues, EPA has no objection to this permit. There were no public comments. It seems appropriate to go ahead and adopt the renewal with the amendments that implement House Bill 1300. Commissioner Lindley, what do you think?
I'm in agreement.
Hard to argue with that. Commissioner Janeka?
I'm not only in agreement, I'm awash with excitement. I'm just so happy to be able to approve this and help oyster aquaculture in Texas take one more step forward. It's good work. And on that note, I'll make the motion that we adopt the renewal with amendments of Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System General Permit number TXG 130000 as recommended by the Executive Director.
A second.
And I give it an amen. So the motion has been made and seconded, and amen. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Vote aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 8 is the consideration of a resolution to extend the existence of the Irrigator Advisory Council and appoint 3 members to serve on the council. The Executive Director's staff is here to present this item as well.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Shannon Frazier, Work Leader for the Technical Programs Team of the Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division and the Office of Compliance and Enforcement. With me today is Ms. Alicia Ramirez, Staff Attorney with the Environmental Law Division, and Ms. Christy Mills-Gerard, Deputy Director of the Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division. We are here today to request the appointment of 3 new members to the agency's Irrigator Advisory Council. If approved, these recommended appointees will receive 6 years terms that will expire on February 1st, 2027. The recommended appointees are Mr. Jimmy Bergdorf, a licensed irrigator from Saginaw, Texas, Mr. James Garvin, a licensed irrigator from Cibolo, Texas, and Mr. Mark Peterson, a public member from San Antonio, Texas. Included in your backup materials are resumes for each of the recommended appointees describing their backgrounds and qualifications for the appointments. In addition, we request the Commission extend the existence of the Irrigator Advisory Council to February 1st, 2027. Currently, the Council is set to expire in February 2025. Thank you, and we are available to answer any questions you may have on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
I'm just curious if you might be able to characterize for me, we had a reasonably limited number of applicants from this pool in terms of covering the full coverage, geographic coverage of the state, and that really doesn't surprise me entirely. But I'm curious about the variety of expertise of the different applicants. I was struck by of the 2 members representing the irrigators' interests. I think that they bring a real additional depth of expertise because of the current entities that they work for, in addition to having their irrigators licenses. So I'm just curious if that was unique of these applicants or whether that was reflected across the applicant pool. Just curious to hear a little more about that.
Excuse me. No, I think that was unique across the pool. It was, I think with this year's pool, it was a little more interesting than the previous years. There was a much lower number of applicants that we received. And I'm not sure if that was a reflection of the pandemic or what have you. That's a really interesting question. I'd be glad to get more information on that and bring it back to you if that would be appropriate.
I appreciate that. I'd certainly love to discuss in the future. I was really impressed by the experience that you are grabbing in these applicants. So I'm very comfortable moving forward, and I appreciate y'all giving it a good look.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Smith, has anyone signed in to speak on this item?
No one is registered on this one.
And what does the Office of Public Interest Counsel think?
OPIC supports the nominations of Mr. Bergdorf, Mr. Garvin, and Mr. Peterson, and the continued existence of the Irrigators Advisory Council. We recommend approval of the resolution presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. McWhorter. I also want to thank the current council members for their service and our 3 nominees for their willingness to serve. The council does serve an important advisory role, and I think it's appropriate for us to continue the council and appoint the recommended nominees. Commissioner Lindley, what are your thoughts?
I feel the same way, and I've got a motion if we're ready.
Imagine we are.
Okay, I would move that we adopt the Executive Director's recommended resolution extending the existence of the Irrigator Advisory Council until February 1st, 2027, and filling the vacancies on the Irrigator Advisory Council as follows. First, appoint James, also I guess it goes by Jimmy Bergdorf, effective March 31st, 2021 for a term to expire February 1st, 2027. Appoint James Garvin, effective March 31st, 2021 for a term to expire February 1st, 2027. and appoint Mark A. Peterson effective March 31st, 2021, for a term to expire February 1st, 2027.
Second that motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
That will take us to the enforcement docket, which is items 9 through 22. The Executive Director's staff is here to present these matters.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Melissa Cordell of the Enforcement Division, and with me today are Brian Sinclair, also of the Enforcement Division, and Charmaine Backens of the Litigation Division representing the Executive Director. Pending before you are items 9 through 22. The total assessed administrative penalties are $182,130, with $22,831 deferred, $40,831 applied towards supplemental environmental projects, and $118,468 to the general revenue. We respectfully request that items 12 and 13 be remanded to the Executive Director for further case development. We are requesting approval of items 9 through 11 and 14 through 22 and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cordell. Are you able to expand at all on items 12 and 13, the purpose for pulling those back?
I believe that Mr. Sinclair is on the line for that.
Okay. Morning, Mr.
Yes. Good morning. This is Brian Sinclair on behalf of the Executive Director. We looked over these particular orders, and there was some concerns about the sequence of ownership issues and authorization issues. And in looking at these cases, we determined that we needed to make sure that they were correct. And there were some questions that came up that we needed to further explore before we presented these particular default orders to the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. I appreciate that. I don't have any other questions for staff at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, and I would be comfortable adopting what the ED proposed today.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
I should have no questions, but I can't help but express a little interest in a question about these two items, having had the chance to look at them and review them. And so I'm going to first put a question to our General Counsel, Ms. Smith. Is discussion of these two items, 12 and 13, most appropriately reserved until we see them again?
They have been noticed for this agenda, so you can ask questions about them.
And Commissioner Janeka, I'm going to have some observations about them too, but why don't you go ahead?
Well, at my peril, I'll carve right into it. I'm just a little concerned in the public's view that there could be some arguments of evading penalties or fines, and so I think I'd really be curious to see how whatever agreed orders or settlements the Executive Director would recommend for these matters. I would be interested to see an analysis of what the fines, the total dollar amount fines and penalties would look like were these applicants to have followed the process correctly, not have allowed their business registration to have lapsed and put our agency in a bit of a bind where we find ourselves needing to enforce a permit against an entity that no longer holds it. And so I think I would really want to see a clear comparison of the two counterfactuals, just to be able to help eliminate any argument that our agency was levying a lesser fine because of those particular steps that occurred. And I don't think that that's a real concern other than if we don't explicitly make that point and help clarify it for me to see. I think it would be a little easy for the public to jump to conclusions and misinterpret our agency's findings on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. Is there a question in there at all for Mr. Sinclair? An observation?
Yeah, I guess it would be a pointed question if we were trying to make a decision on this, but not needing to make a decision today. I'm not displeased to hear that the Executive Director is taking a closer look at this, and so I'm comfortable merely stating that encouragement.
Okay.
So thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Janeka. And you touched on some of my concerns too. And colleagues, let me just share an opinion I've formed. And you know me, I'm happy to be talked out of my opinions at any time. But this is where I've arrived, being after reviewing the backup material. This all comes back to Mr. Gillis. And the opinion that I've formed is that Mr. Gillis has not shown care and concern for his neighbors. He's unlawfully dumped pollutants on them. He has not shown any regard for the state. He has availed himself of our authorizations, but neglected to pay any attention to our efforts to help him achieve compliance. I also think that he may be abusing the corporate entities, as you suggested, Commissioner. I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth, but as you suggested, Commissioner Janeka, to evade personal responsibility. I think he's abusing his industry by being a bad operator, a bad actor, and giving his industry a bad name. So needless to say, I'm not enamored with Mr. Gillis. I would love it if he would demonstrate to me that my opinion is not well formed. In the meantime, I appreciate OCE pulling these orders back to make sure they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's on them. I would also encourage the office to pay close attention to him and make sure that we're not allowing continuing pollution. And the concern about evading penalties and fines is Commissioner Janeka, that is a good concern. In my experience, it's usually only temporary. And as these things go, the more you evade, the more the penalties tend to mount. Sometimes tragically, in this case, perhaps appropriately. But I'm ready to see Mr. Gillis prove me wrong, change my opinion, get right with the agency. And if not, I'm imagining his next stop might be the Texas Attorney General's office. So that's my opinion on items 12 and 13. And happy to take any other comment on it, or we can move on.
I think you gentlemen have stated everything really well. I would echo both of y'all's comments. So anyway, that's all.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Lindley. Well, let's move on. Ms. Smith, is there anyone signed in to speak on the enforcement docket?
We have someone signed in on item 9 who's available for questions, but nobody is signed in asking to speak.
Okay, let's move on to the Office of Public Interest Counsel. Mr. McWhirter.
OPIC reviewed these items and recommends approval of items 9 through 11 and items 14 through 22 as presented by the Executive Director. Also, we have no objection to continuation of items 12 and 13 for further case development.
Thank you for that. And I agree. I think we should approve these items except for 12 and 13. And I think we're ready for a motion.
I think I've got just the motion to reflect your the Executive Director's update for us on 12 and 13. I would move we adopt items 9 through 11 and 14 through 22 as recommended today by the Executive Director, and that we remand items 12 and 13 as recommended by the Executive Director.
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
I also vote aye.
I also vote aye. Motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 23 is the consideration of the monthly enforcement report, and the Executive Director's staff is here to present.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. My name is Melissa Cordell of the Enforcement Division, and with me are Brian Sinclair of the Enforcement Division and Charmaine Backens of the Litigation Division. We are here to present the monthly enforcement report for fiscal year 2021 through January. There were 404 effective administrative orders issued, and of those, 56 contain supplemental environmental projects. These orders assessed a total of $4,284,575 in penalties, with a payable amount of $2,729,341. $786,672 are to be paid towards supplemental environmental projects. 6,212 notices of violation have been issued through either our field offices or review of self-reported data in our central office, and 675 enforcement action referrals have been received. There are 1,546 pending administrative orders, with 214 cases that are on the backlog. 207 cases that are pending at the Attorney General's Office for representation in district court, and 6 judgments have been issued. 2,081 cases are being tracked for compliance. We've included for review a summary of OCE investigative activities for fiscal years 2019, 2020, and 2021. We are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cordell. I have none at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
None for me. Thanks.
Ms. Smith, has anyone signed in to speak on these items?
No one has signed in.
Mr. McWhirter?
Thanks for the report. I don't have any questions.
Yeah, thank you again, Ms. Cordell, and the team's work on this report. No action is necessary on this item, so Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call the next item.
Item 24 is the consideration of agency post-incident response actions related to the February 2021 severe winter storm, including plans to evaluate factors that impacted public water system response and recovery actions. The Executive Director's staff is here to present this matter.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I'm Carrie Michelle O'Kyle. I'm the Deputy Director of the Water Supply Division. The Water Supply Division oversees the public drinking water program at the agency. I'm here this morning to present the agency's plan for conducting a post-incident analysis of the winter storm event that occurred during the week of February 14th. Loss of power generation due to cold weather and peak demand left approximately 4 million customers without power, including many public water systems. Public water systems experienced water outages and other emergency conditions that required a significant number of systems to issue boil water notices. Boil water notices are typically issued as a precaution or notification to protect customers when an unexpected condition has caused a potential for biological contamination of potable drinking water. Due to the loss of power, many systems were unable to adequately treat water or pump treated water into the distribution system. This created a cascading effect that required the systems that purchase treated water and only consist of a distribution system to also issue boil water notices. Systems with generators of all sizes encountered mechanical failures due to the freezing temperatures and icy conditions. For the systems that were able to send treated water to the distribution system, they also encountered multiple issues, from frozen or broken water lines to increased customer demand. Increased demand resulted from customers dripping or running taps to prevent freezing, as well as filling large containers for emergency personal use, and the loss of water when lines broke or froze. Additionally, some systems that were not able to access water treatment plants to evaluate the damage, start generators, or conduct mitigation actions because of the hazardous road conditions caused by ice and downed trees and power lines. These emergency conditions, along with the extended power outages, resulted in systems reporting 1,985 boil water notices issued during the week of the storm. Nearly 40% of the state's community public water systems issued a boil water notice that week. Approximately 80% of the systems serve a population of less than 3,300, and about 57% of the small systems serve a population of less than 500. Rules and regulations currently require certain types of public water systems to provide emergency power. Of all the systems that issued a boil water notice, approximately 55% of the systems are subject to emergency power and/or emergency preparedness plan requirements. During the March 3rd Commission work session, agency staff were tasked to conduct an after-action review to evaluate the factors that impacted so many public water systems during this storm event. To kick off the project, we have formed an interdisciplinary team made up of staff members from the Office of Water and the Office of Compliance and Enforcement. The project team will collect information to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges faced by public water systems due to the storm and evaluate the resources in place to assist systems in increasing their resiliency. The project team will engage stakeholders from both the private and public sectors to discuss a variety of topics that may offer insights to further enhance and integrate critical infrastructure resilience. Our goal is to improve public health and safety through the development of response and recovery actions that will mitigate risk posed by catastrophic weather-related events. Some of the issues that the team will explore will include adequacy of emergency power resources and other critical infrastructure, evaluation of system design standards relating to weatherization, equipment inventory and maintenance procedures, rules and regulations relating to water system resilience, conservation efforts during high customer demand times, chemical and fuel supplies, communication pathways and boil water notice procedures, alternative sources for water supply and distribution, agency response and assistance efforts, and conducting functional exercises on emergency response actions. The project team will begin work by developing an in-depth public water system survey. The survey will be sent to over 7,000 public water systems and will help the team collect information about the storm's impact. The survey will be designed to identify the procedures systems utilize to prepare for, respond to, and recover from the storm. The project team will also conduct roundtable discussions across the state to create a platform of open dialogue with a variety of stakeholders. These discussions will help us to identify the key issues that led to the cascading failures across critical infrastructure and those that affected restoration of services. Stakeholders will consist of affected utilities, public water systems of different sizes and types, various associations, water districts, state and federal agencies, consultants and engineers, vendors and manufacturers, as well as mutual aid agencies. The project team will also seek information from subject matter experts in utility and electric regulations and emergency response as it pertains to public water systems. The project team will conduct a review of rules and regulations, including regulations from other states relating to the weatherization of water system facilities. We'll also review current literature to identify best practices to enhance public water system resilience. Agency staff will also conduct presentations, case studies, and lessons learned, and training in emergency preparedness and planning at the agency's annual Public Drinking Water Conference in August. The conference attracts approximately 1,200 participants from the public drinking water sector each year. Once we conclude these tasks, we will analyze the information we obtained during the process and will present our findings and suggested recommendations for your consideration. Recommendations may include regulatory, statutory, additional training and guidance needs, or changes to agency processes to address the challenges experienced by systems during the storm. We will also present any recommended actions that the agency can take to better assist public drinking water during these times of catastrophic events. We are proposing a project completion timeline of 12 months. During that time, a representative of the team will provide monthly progress updates to you at commission agendas. That concludes my presentation of the agency's project plan. We certainly welcome any feedback that you may have, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. LaKyle. Great presentation. I mean, this is certainly a comprehensive review that you're undertaking, and it seems like you hit everything that I was thinking of and went well beyond that in terms of outlining the various aspects, features, facets, I guess, of this problem that we're going to take a look at. 12 months sounds like it might be an ambitious timeline, but I think it's an appropriate timeline. One question I have is, as the work is underway, if there's anything that seems actionable, like immediately, before you reach the findings and recommendations portion, I would say just keep an eye out for those. And if there's an opportunity to peel them off and get them done, let's go ahead and do that and not wait till we get to the end of this project. And then one question I had was about staffing. I mean, this is going to require quite a bit of work, and I know that your team is always strapped, and we never know when the next drinking water emergency might arise and pull you away. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how y'all might staff this.
Well, we've actually been lucky enough to grab folks from across the agency. A lot of them have emergency preparedness and response backgrounds, along with a lot of public water system expertise. There are about 8 of us on the team, and so I think we're prepared and looking forward to working with stakeholders to try to mitigate some of the impacts that happen from the storm and create some good future work for us to consider and for you to consider in the future.
That's great. I appreciate it. And I guess, in some cases, our stakeholders might be a force multiplier and help us get some of this work done too. Also, just something to consider, I also like plugging our Mickey Leland environmental internship program. So if you see an opportunity for some interns, that might be a way to share the work a little bit as well. Well, thank you again. Commissioner Lindley, any questions for Ms. LaKyle?
2 quick ones. One, just a follow-up. I was trying to jot down when you were listing off kind of the list of things that the after-action review is going to include, that list, and I think I only got about half of them because it is impressive and extensive. So I'd love to get just that list that you rattled off at some point, just as a follow-up. And then I'm curious if you know when the survey will be sent out, if y'all have a timeline for that. I would think it probably has to be over the next short couple of months. That way you can get the results back and have everything wrapped up in a year.
Yeah, we're currently designing the survey right now. We'll be sending out a postcard within the next 30 days, inviting public water systems to take the survey through a link, and that link will be available. And then we'll also do a shout out through our drinking water groups, inviting them to take the survey. But hopefully, again, in about 30 days, we'll have that survey out for everyone to start working on.
Yeah, and all I will add on to that, I guess, is, by then we will have had another agenda, so there will be probably another month, or right around then, maybe another monthly update. And, the 3 of us, for better or for worse, get asked to go speak at things. And summer's usually conference season. And so if you ever hear of us going and talking to a group that you want to make sure this gets, I think we'll all be pretty cognizant of plugging this and encouraging water folks basically to participate. But if you ever hear of an opportunity where we can help you out, I guess is how I'm saying it, let us know, because I know I'm speaking for the other 2, but I know that they both would feel the same way, saying help us help you however we can, getting the word out on this.
Yes, and we're going to be sending this to a lot of associations and other potential folks that want to contribute to this process, and hopefully those folks will also help us advertise to make sure we have enough public water systems taking the survey.
Well, thanks. I thought that was a great report. I don't have any more questions.
Commissioner Janeka.
I just want to commend Ms. Kyle and the team that is assembling. I think this is going to be a really difficult task ahead, and I think that I'm pleased with the outline of the work y'all are laying out, and I'm grateful for the questions you both raised, Chairman, Commissioner Lindley. I think those echoed exactly my own. A monthly reporting schedule to us, I think, strikes just about the right balance in terms of giving us good, meaningful updates. It'll catch our agendas at hopefully opportunities where we can help amplify requests from that work group to the stakeholder community, or help explain to the public, where I think there's a high potential here as we examine options and as we examine what tools may be necessary to ask of the private sector or to require of the private sector. I fully expect to have some alarmed people out in the public. I fully expect some water ratepayers or some taxpayers or people to look at those requirements, look at us considering them, and be a little concerned, because I think that this does impose a real cost on a lot of our state's residents in terms of hitting systems that just may be at the very brink of revenue positive operations. So I want to be sensitive as we go through this, and I commend y'all venturing venturing out and leave no stone unturned, but do come quickly to our level if there is any potential for misunderstanding or confusion. I want to definitely commit all agency resources necessary to explaining this, and I never want to suggest or prod or require work, but I could see this as an appropriate long-going effort where a similar agency landing page on our website for the storm or for hurricane events, things like that. This may be one of those projects that acquires its own page over time as we have more updates for it. And so I will just look forward to continuing that conversation with ED staff, and I appreciate it so much, the thought y'all given it to it to date.
Just latching on, thanks colleagues for your comments. Latching on to something you said, Commissioner Janeka, about the ratepayers. There's, like I said, there's several different facets to this problem, and once we reach the recommendation page, that doesn't answer how are we going to pay for it. So the financing question is another one, and it might follow ratepayers. There might be opportunities to secure grant funding. Texas Water Development Board, I would anticipate, would have a role in this and helping finance some of these projects too. So I think as we roll forward on this, we should be thinking about to what extent do we want to go beyond sort of the mechanical substantive recommendations and get into suggestions about, how to pay for this, how this can work for ratepayers and so on. So appreciate you raising the issue, Commissioner Janeka. Ms. Lakyle, I don't think we have any more questions for you at this point. Appreciate the presentation. Ms. Smith, is there anyone that signed in to speak on this item?
No one is registered for this one.
And Mr. McWhorter, what are your thoughts?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate all the hard work being undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any additional thoughts or observations on this item?
None for me.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Lakyle, thank you, and thanks to the team for undertaking the project. Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call the next items.
Items 25 through 28 are for closed session, and the Commission will not meet in closed session today.
With that, colleagues, the time is 10:37 a.m. and we are adjourned.